Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are doing our daily MLB call with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. And in case anyone doubted how legit Joe Duffy really is, his recent ESPN article kind of put that to rest. Joe Duffy, even people who just watch our videos have sent me messages saying, did you see that Joe Duffy was mentioned in this ESPN article? That got a lot of people really kind of open their eyes to who you are, Joe.
It did, and I actually got some emails from people saying I used to follow you on the score phones. Now I know where you are, but I've been featured on CBC, CTV, Bleacher Report, a bunch of other places, but ESPN was nice.
All right, there you go. As legit as you could possibly want, and Joe Duffy giving us free picks and insights all season long, baseball, football, and everything. I really appreciate it, Joe Duffy. All right, Tuesday, August 18th. I guess let's first start with, in these videos, our regular viewers know I have a well-known anti-John Danks and pro-Garret Richards biases, right? And now they're meeting up. But, I have to admit, recently John Danks has actually put up better numbers than Garret Richards. Is that fluky? I'm not exactly sure. I have to think that we're going to get a low number here because of how they pitched recently. Maybe I'm racist against John Danks and racist in favor of Garret Richards. Maybe I'm a Garret Richards supremacist, but I'm thinking that the Angels are going to be a good bet here at a very low line. What do you think?
Well, there is no question that Garret Richards, they've caught up to him. Danks, there's a reason, I guess, why the White Sox have stuck with him at times this year. He has stanks. I have to say, I don't know if there's a pitching edge that really screams out. I know that, there are two pitchers that you do like to discuss quite often, but whether or not I see a humongous edge in that game, I'm not really all that sure, to be honest with you.
All right, well, my bias continues. I think I'm going to be on the Angels there. Joe Duffy, not exactly sure that he agrees with that. I understand Joe Duffy. Certainly recently, John Danks has surprised me, and Garret Richards has been very mediocre, but we'll see. This is our second game we have to talk about. Hisashi Iwakuma, right? Off the no-hitter. Experienced bettors know your first thought is fade in the next game. Here he's going to be at Texas. This is going to be a tough assignment. Chichi Gonzalez, though, I see, is the scheduled starter for Texas. And he was getting knocked around before he got sent down. Then he got called back up and got hit at Minnesota in his last start. So maybe Seattle will hit Chichi Gonzalez. If we want to fade Iwakuma, maybe the right thing to do here is just go for the over. We're probably going to get a low total here. I'm guessing 8.5, maybe even 8. What do you think, Joe?
Well, Iwakuma, he's done pretty well against Texas. 7-3 in the last 10 against him. And Chichi Gonzalez, you're correct, 0-4, 6.03 ERA in his last 6 starts. I definitely think he's going to get lit up. Certainly a pitching advantage for Seattle, but it's not as if Iwakuma's been fantastic. So I would agree with you. A high-scoring game is a pretty darn good possibility, but you're going to get a total of around 9.
A pitching advantage overall in general for Seattle, yes. But what about the fade a guy after a no-hitter angle?
Yeah, that is certainly something that I lean towards. There's inevitably going to be a letdown, but it's not something that I ride all that hard because, look, a guy is going to be pitching with confidence. So I've certainly heard that theory. I really like to ride a guy more so my bubble burst applies when maybe he's on a great 5-game stretch and then he gets lit up in his previous game. So I'm only a mild believer at best. And, a guy's going to have a letdown after a no-hitter.
All right, and then the recent Boston series, we kind of discussed overs in that series, and we were dead on with that one. Now they're going to, on Tuesday, they have Cleveland at Boston. Trevor Bauer and Eduardo Rodriguez, two highly touted youngsters with great stuff, but both have gotten hit hard since the All-Star break. What do we expect here? Another over with Boston? We expect both these guys to struggle again, or at least one of them. And because in that Joe Kelly Boston game, I said I loved the over. Joe Kelly actually pitched a great game, but the game went easily over because the other guy got crushed. So I'm thinking we have maybe the same situation here in Boston. What do you think, Joe?
Well, the interesting thing is Bauer's been getting slapped around a little bit more at home. He's hitting the road where he's been a little bit better. He's got a 2.35 ERA on the road, but at the same time, he has been struggling. I do think 90% of the game is half mental, and I like these guys that actually pitch a little bit better on the road than they do at home. So I think that there might be somewhat of an edge for Bauer here.
All right, so you would lean Cleveland, but you wouldn't necessarily lean over?
I would definitely lean Cleveland more than the over, but as you said, it's not like Bauer's been that fantastic, so we could see a high-scoring game.
All right, a lot of games on the Tuesday card that I'm liking. I got two more I want to ask you about. First one, kind of an interesting situation, the Detroit at the Cubs. Now, Anibal Sanchez, he's the kind of guy who, has a couple mediocre starts and then will come back and, throw like a 9-inning, 1-run game. But recently, he hasn't had any of those 9-inning run games. He's actually been pretty consistently mediocre. He's given up 4 or more runs in 7 out of his last 9 starts. He's been really hittable since the All-Star break. Then on the other side, Jason Hamill, not awesome, but generally pretty decent. Is there any reason to expect Sanchez to not have another 4 or more run start here?
Sanchez, he actually is playing on extended rest, and my philosophy there is much like what I say in just about every other sport where a team has more rest, or in the NBA where a team's playing 3 games in 4 nights. In the case of Sanchez, he's been struggling, so maybe the fact that he's pitching on 6 days rest can help him clear some things up, and maybe will do him some good. In the case of Hamill, he hasn't been pitching very well. He's been pulled after 5 2/3 innings or less in his past 6 starts, so he hasn't gone all that deep. But am I saying to go with Sanchez? Not necessarily, but I do think that maybe the extended rest is coming at the right time. I'm not a big fan of Hamill. This is another game where we could see some pretty high scoring, and both teams will probably go to the bullpen early, I think.
Another game that's interesting to me is San Francisco at St. Louis, right? Mike Leakey has been traded to San Francisco, and in general, he's a guy who, I usually expect to pitch very well, especially when he's going in a pitcher-friendly park. And then on the other side, Lance Lynn. We know that Lance Lynn has usually been very consistent and very excellent this year. He got crushed in his last start, though. He threw less than an inning. Question is, was that just a blip, and will he bounce back in a big way here, or is that indicative of struggles upcoming for Lance Lynn? What do you think, Joe?
Lynn's a solid starter, and he's obviously playing for a St. Louis team that hasn't lost at home very much this year. They've been a deadly home team. In the case of Leak, he's actually struggled against the Cardinals, 4.34 ERA in 16 starts. So I definitely think that the Cardinals have a pitching advantage here, but when you got the Cardinals at home, you're never going to get good value.
So you do expect then a bounce back from Lynn then?
Most definitely. He's a rock-solid pitcher, and he's in a pretty good spot, and I think he'll have a little bit of a cushion with Leak having been so-so at best.
A lot of leans for me. For Tuesday, August 18th, I'll go over all of them. Leaning the Angels over the White Sox. I'm leaning an over in Cleveland and Boston. Definitely leaning over in Seattle at Texas. Definitely leaning Cubs. Definitely leaning under in San Francisco at St. Louis. And then there's other interesting games that we could talk about, but I'm not going to bring up. R.A. Dickey making a start. He's been pitching very well. Clayton Kershaw making a start. He's been awesome recently, but the Dodgers are just 5-7 in his road starts this year. What else would you like to bring to our attention from Tuesday, August 18th, Joe?
Well, you're right about Dickey. I'm surprised you didn't bring up Dickey. He's been hard to go against since the All-Star break. 4-0 with a 1.49 ERA in 6 starts. Francisco Liriano. The Pirates have won 8 straight of his starts and 11 out of his last 14. And Aaron Nola, as these young studs tend to be, looks like he's a big splits pitcher now. He's only had 4 starts, but his 2 home starts, 2.45 ERA, he's pitching at home. Compare that to on the road, 5.30, and that's what these young studs tend to do.
Yeah, I guess the reason I didn't bring up the Toronto game is just because I feel a little bit uncertain about that. The Toronto lineup against Nola, obviously, Nola has big potential. The Toronto lineup obviously can be very strong, so I'm kind of uncertain about that game as well. And then Liriano, I was going to bring that up. Overall in the year, he's been great, but very recently, though, his last 3 games have been mediocre, and you expect him to probably be returned to an excellent form here?
Well, the Pirates are a very good team, and, he's a crafty veteran. He manages to find ways to win. So I think, the Pirates with Liriano are at least something to look at. But that's, generally what I want to do is give some early notes, some early check marks, and then as game time approaches, see what the other intel corroborates with. But, just some of my early leans and observations.
Right, and Chase Anderson for Arizona has definitely been pretty shaky recently. All right, we got all my leans, though, for Tuesday. A lot of possible bets on Tuesday, August 18th. Thanks so much, Joe.